Everybody's got a story, you just have to listen. Well, I'm Joe Pardavila, and this is Good Listen. And if you've been keeping up with the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively drama, you know that the title of a intimacy coordinator has come up in reports. Basically, there's someone on the set who's there to make sure that both actors are getting along and they're able to film these very sensual scenes. So I was curious about what it's like to be one of those people. So I've got Jonna Naegele on the show. She is a intimacy coordinator, but she's also an actress and acting coach in her own right. We're going to talk about all of that stuff. We're going to talk about what it's like to be an actor these days and what an intimacy coordinator actually does on the set of a movie. Jonna Naegele, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for taking the time and joining me. So let's talk about your journey because you've been acting for years. Now you're coaching. And I feel like I've always said this. To be an actor, you have to be the best entrepreneur. And I think there are a lot of skills like you've got to do you've got to be the one who's going to get your headshots. You're the one who's going to be sending out for casting. You're the one that's going to have to prepare for you have to take money out of your own pocket to invest in your career, whether it comes to acting classes or what have you. So tell me about how you've used this, because obviously you are an entrepreneur within being an entrepreneur. So tell me about this journey of being an actor to now doing stuff where you're teaching and helping the next generation of actors.
Yeah, well, and it's something that I always try to encourage my students, like have additional streams where you're able to not just be comfortable, but that you feel like you're thriving in. So yes, I'm an actress, but acting coach, and now I'm in to management. I'm also an intimacy coordinator on sets as well, and I'm a certified brain health professional. So I do things with the healthcare as well. So you don't have to just be limited to just being an actor. And something that I always stress to my students when they come to me like, yes, I can't wait to, quit my corporate job or quit doing this or not focus on what my parents want me to do here when it's more of my young adult students. And it's like, here's at the end of the day, actors are scientists. Like actors, you're going on set as a biologist, and there's great A-listers who also have an additional profession. You don't have to just focus on acting, especially now in 2025 where just information and education, the ability to be skilled in so many great things are also helpful to your acting. So you step on set, sometimes it's required for you to when you're audition to speak about like, hey, do you actually have experience as an RN? Do you have experience as an EMT? Are you an experienced police officer? And if the answer is yes, or you have some sort of knowledge about that because you trained in a small class or something, it's helpful to you. It is a bonus. So I say, to actors, it's okay to have multiple passions that you are focused on. Some great actors, anytime they're doing an interview, they may talk about, just kind of being in this place where they're not working for months, they're not working for years. And so after you are off this high of doing this really big, awesome movie and all the PR is done and the press is done and the interviews are done, you're unemployed until the next job. So it's good to kind of have those in betweens. And now post COVID, there's so many opportunities to have remote jobs that it's really unnecessary to struggle. I just think the struggling working actor isn't as necessary as it used to be. Like it was like a big deal, a big awesome shield that you held and was able to carry. If it's like, yeah, I struggled to the pits and the depths and didn't eat for days, it's just not necessary. Like, take care of yourself, be healthy. It's 2025. Like, you can totally do both. And I'm a big advocate for that. And not only that, but I also provide jobs for my students. Most of my coaches in my studio have been students of mine for many years, and they, earned their positions to now make money as my coaches. So, I just think there's room for additional expansion in your artistry.
Nice, that's great. You mentioned it there, and you posted on Threads a while back that you had booked an intimacy coordinator gig. And for a lot of us, that position was like, what does that even mean? Until the whole Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively thing came about, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, so there's someone on set making sure that these love scenes are done well,
Mhm.
with complete what's the word, consent from each actor. What's it like to actually do something like that?
It's a very challenging position, honestly, because it's not just choreographing, and a lot of individuals who aren't super familiar with the position think that we kind of are on set just to make sure that the hot and steamy scenes keep their boundaries. But also there's a lot of emotional intelligence that is required as well. So I'm also like a conversationalist. I help diffuse kind of irritation that may stir up between a producer and a director and actors who don't feel confident or comfortable or even secure enough to say, "Hey, I'm having a problem with wardrobe." Or so we actually do a lot for the entire set, outside of just choreograph the steamy scenes. Now that is like our big job. Of course, the project that I'm working on, it is a film this month. It is a lot of choreographing, but as an intimacy coordinator, I work ahead with these actors. I help them build chemistry, make sure that I understand their boundaries, but also I'm a direct liaison between the actors and the director. So when the director needs a little bit more, or the director's trying to find certain views and angles without crossing those boundaries, I'm the one that everyone kind of relies on to make sure that we get the great shot, we get what is the vision, but also no one is no lines are crossed, and no one feels like they jeopardized any of their values for an opportunity, because that's not worth it.
Now, I'm curious, how do you handle the legalese of this? Because for many actors, they have certain stipulations in their contract where maybe they'll show an ass cheek, or they'll show
Yeah.
one boob, or whatever. I'm
Right.
making it up.
Right.
So
Sure.
how do you navigate that as so obviously as an intimacy coordinator, you have to know this going in, and then
Yes.
somehow choreograph around these sort
Yeah.
of ground rules, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a closed set, so nowadays it used to be everyone was kind of around and even crew, but it's minimized to maybe 3 or 4 crew members, if that. So 1 audio, the camera, camera guy, the director, maybe 1 producer, and myself. So it is all rehearsed and prepared way beforehand. And for me, that is where I kind of am in there as like the referee, where the shot has to be handled so delicately that nothing slips. There isn't an inappropriate moment, although while keeping the chemistry and the energy needed to get the scene done. So it's a lot of very hands-on stop go. Let's make sure that we're all appropriate. And it is very serious because, again, per SAG and all the adjustments newly with SAG, it is required to really have them on certain sets per SAG rules in this, and if it's a SAG project.
Okay, without being crass, I'm just
Yeah.
curious. So, say we all kind of know how sex works, but like when these are
Yeah.
choreographed, do you say there's going to be 3 thrusts here, you're going to touch her buttocks here? Like, is it that like spelled out during this choreographing stage?
It actually depends on the project. So this one that I'm currently working on, there's not a lot of the close-ups. It's more so the angle of the camera is gonna be like we're peeping in a window. So it's actually gonna be more of a master shot. And so the actors are gonna choreograph their whole, hot and steamy moment, tossing themselves around their apartment. So with an angle like that, it's not really necessary. It's like a dance. You hit your marks, and what happens happens, and we're going to rehearse it enough times to where, when it comes time to film, it's a rehearsed choreographed dance. Now when we're talking close-ups, yeah, that's actually as detailed as it has to be, because we've got maybe a kissing of the nipple that may actually happen, and we cross that. If we're thinking Vikings, the amazing great show of Vikings, there's some really great scenes there where it's very close up, there's a lot of thrusting, but yes, those are very particular and very focused, but those are close up. So we there's a stop and go. We're gonna do the thrust here, stop, break, reset, different angle. Now we're gonna get the top, the here. Yeah, so
Wow.
it's very particular. It may be 150 shots to get that one momentum of a thrust
Wow.
action.
That's
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
Yeah.
And we've often heard actors in the past, even before intimacy coordinators came into play, how just awkward and how non-sexy it is. What level of making it even more awkward is having it like the intimacy coordinator involved there? Or is it just or do you think just from speaking to actors, it just makes it a whole lot easier?
Yeah, so for me, I'm actually so before I became an intimacy coordinator, I'm accredited in the Chubbuck technique, which is notorious as Ivana Chubbuck. The Power of the Actor is her book, Los Angeles Times bestseller. But she has a technique where sexual chemistry is like the reason why it has won so many awards. Halle Berry back in 1999 shouted Ivana Chubbuck out on stage when she won her Golden Globe for Monster. So and that's one of the like, if you look up most famous sex scenes, monster
Roger
ball,
Paul.
balls,
Listen, yeah.
monsters ball will come up. So, and Ivana Chubbuck was that's really what she's known for is the sexual chemistry in the scene. Now, that's without edits. So my point is I was trained in that first, and a lot of times when I was brought on set as acting coach, it was because of the chemistry that was lacking. So I was actually brought on sets where the 2 actors did not like each other as human beings, and there was some tension there. So they brought me on to like as a emergency to get the hot and steamy going so they can get this shot and move out of this location that they paid for. So, um so with that, it's like I have a mix. So I definitely infuse that. That's why I always I require anytime I'm going to intimacy coordinate a scene, I have to work with the actors in rehearsals privately before so they can build chemistry with each other. We can just talk. They can get to know each other, and then we can talk about the characters and why the sex is even happening. I think that's important. And so that takes a lot of the awkwardness out of it when you have an objective. So, for instance, this particular movie that I'm working on currently, they're trying to have a child. So, there's like a lot of passion that's involved. There's purpose to it. It's not just, your average one night stand kind of fun thing. And those are fun too, but we're talking different objectives. So, I think that takes a lot of the awkwardness out when you have someone skilled enough that can share with you like this is the why. What are we doing here? Outside of just the act of the do.
Yeah, the deed. Let's talk about chemistry because it's to me it's fascinating because it's one of those things that it's obviously subjective. No one really knows. It's chemistry is one of those funny. No one knows what it is until you see it. So and I've seen there's been certain shows where I'll be like, yeah, I don't know if those people don't like each other, but there's just not that it thing.
Mhm.
How does it happen? Is it luck? Like if we look back at the history of cinema and we see these, either Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, or reel off any famous coupling on screen. Like,
Yeah.
how do you explain chemistry between two actors on a set?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with them being professional and, like, rehearsing before, getting to know each other before, spending time with each other, and actually liking each other. And it doesn't have to, obviously, some actors are married and actually in relationships outside of having to play their acting relationship. So there is a bonding that needs to happen, and professionally, like, if you're in the field professionally, you will have that desire to want to bond with them. And that goes for parent child too, because kids are really difficult and shy to work with if they're not all over the place, but also they're creative artists. So it's like we don't want to dim them down because we need that playfulness. So the same with it really is the same with any relationship that you have. If you're playing mother and son, there's a bond that needs to happen. You need to spend time with each other outside of just the first day of set. And I think that eliminates a lot of the awkwardness. I once booked a commercial that we had to be on. It was more of an infomercial, so we were supposed to be friends, and we were flown to New Orleans to hang out down on French Street to go hang out. They paid for us to go have some dinners together to build like a bond as if we had been college friends for college friends and gotten older and had families, but like hanging out now and cooking together. But they sent us down to New Orleans. They put us up in Boomtown at a casino, so they gave us vouchers to go have crab legs and just to build a relationship. And hey, it worked because they improv the whole commercial. They improv the whole thing for the 3 days that we were there on set, and it was just like we had known each other for years and had just met. Yeah. And one came from Los Angeles, another from New York, and I came from Atlanta. So
See what crab legs will do. I mean, that'll create
Yeah.
chemistry any day. Um, So I think people who either are involved with actors, maybe family, date romantically, I think they know what sometimes a role will require because we've all seen
Yeah.
like a movie. But as an
Mhm.
industry coordinator and someone who's been a coach on set, have you ever had to help with actors and their relationship outside of a scene because an actor's maybe spouse or girlfriend be like, wow, it seemed like that was more intimate than I thought than you told me it was going to be. Like, how do you suggest actors deal with that? Because at the end of the day, they sometimes have someone to go home to after all this intimacy was going on set.
Mhm.
Have you
Mhm.
been involved in that?
I have. I have actually. I've had married, straight, relationships that have had to play gay on a set. And so that's obviously a difference there too, and to go home and have those conversations. But I think that for me, I always include the partner, and a big advocate in any of my professional working actors who are married and who are in relationships to share everything that they can up front, especially if they know they wanna stay involved with this person and this person has signed up to, be partner to a working actor. My husband is a working actor as well. So I too have been in those positions where there's kissing, for him, me, and for me, him. Um, but understanding that, hey, this is our craft and this is the profession, and we have those boundaries that are set. We have intimacy coordinators. We have to trust that the process is as professional as possible and that we know our boundaries. And just keep reassuring, because it's a hard thing. There's not an easy, like, oh, this is the check that where everybody's good and okay. It's intimacy. That's a very vulnerable state, and human condition for everyone to be in. So to not have to feel like, you're nervous, or to feel insecure about it, it's so good to include your partner and conversate with them often, and keep reassuring them the professionalism of the day. And I think that's been, honestly, the best, the best result that I've gotten. I've not had any breakups that I know of, any breakups from any of the scenes, and if anything, more inclusion from these relationships, more inclusions of a partner being more supportive, especially if one of my students was an actor before they got together, and now they're like, "Oh gosh, like, I feel like I'm out of it because 'cause they're in, a whole different field, a different industry, and they know nothing about it." Hey, include them. I've had them come to acting class and, like, "Hey, let's come bring them to acting class, let them sit in, let them audit, be a part of it, let them get to know me." Things like that. So I think it's, like with any profession, that you do, I think it's important to include your spouse and your partner. They should be your biggest support.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. All right, so you kind of hinted this earlier, but when you're an actor, you're the ultimate freelancer. You spend a lot of times unemployed, and someone could be watching this who's maybe not an actor, and they could have downward turns in their career, and there's this moment where like they lose their identity, they don't know who they are, and they don't know how to fill that
Mhm.
time. Especially people that are maybe just genetically built to be busy. What kind of advice do you give to people who have these downward cycles of their life where they're just nothing's going right, or maybe they just haven't found that next opportunity for themselves? Well, how do you help actors and maybe other people that could be struggling with something like that?
Yeah, I'm huge on giving yourself grace, one, and keeping that as a reminder. Like, give yourself grace that you don't control outside of you with this industry. This industry is very unpredictable. Your next job, like, you can fight really hard for it, and you can have all of your boxes checked on your active access, your headshots look phenomenal, and you can hear nothing for that entire year. And that's just the name of the trade for this industry. So one, when you have that understanding, and give yourself some grace on that and say, "Hey, I'm putting my best foot forward. I know I'm training hard and I know I'm highly skilled. That opportunity just isn't there for you, and you have to understand, take a break and go find something that you do like to do, that you enjoy doing." If that's scuba diving, if that is traveling to another state to go stay for a week and just kind of like de-winding yourself, if that is getting into a dance class, focusing on horseback riding for the next couple of months until something hits, Do something else outside of sitting and twiddling your thumbs thinking that it's you. Because most of the time, I'm going to say 99.9% of the time, it's not you. And I think a lot of actors struggle with that. They struggle with thinking like, well, with not knowing if it's them or not. And that can be the biggest self awareness discouragement that you can have because you're thinking, what am I missing? And you'd start to judge yourself. And there's nowhere that you're going to go but down a downward spiral from there because you're going to sit, you're going to get depressed, and you're going to be pondering, like, okay, I need to do this. And you're going to start spending money on new headshots when it's not your headshots. It could be literally that nothing within that next 3 months that you can't see ahead in the future. It's not for you. Like it's not your type. It's not what you have been booking in the past for these next 3 months. And if you don't know that, you could put yourself in a really nasty position of depression. So I always recommend my students stay active in other groups, do other things. PA, you're not above anything. Now, if you're union, it's a limit to doing student films and non-union films, like, you can't do those to an extent. There's been a few rules, so know your rules. Um, but you could do ultra lows, like, nothing, says that you can't work on a language. There's nothing that says you can't join, a skydiving group or whatever and start focusing on that, and here's the thing, you're building up your skills. This is what I talked about in the very beginning of this conversation. You are adding to your special skills of what can I do as a human being that guess what? You don't have to use CGI for. Or because I know stunts. I'm choreographed. I'm well versed in firearms. I know how to hold certain pistols and shotguns, and I can look like I can shoot them because hey, I spent 6 months at a gun range practicing, moving, hitting targets. All of these are special skills that if you actually have them, it can hold a conversation and have the lingo about casting directors don't they can't deny you of that truth. Because a lot of actors fluff it. They'll fluff it. They speak all these different languages. They speak fluent Hebrew, and you ask them, "Oh, you have a Jamaican accent," and they do a terrible, inappropriate job with it. And it's like, no, this during this time, this is a great opportunity, and having that kind of energy to say, totally the perfect opportunity to start learning some patois.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's always what I encourage my students to do.
That's great advice. Her name is Jonna Naegele. Jonna, if folks want to connect with you, find out more about you, where should they start?
Instagram is at Jonna the Coach. If you want to go on Facebook, it's Jonna Carlita Naegele. And my website is coachedbyjonnainc.com. And Jonna is spelled Jonna.
Awesome. Jonna, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for this episode of Good Listen. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. If you enjoyed the show, if you're watching on YouTube, a big old thumbs up would really be awesome. It's a small gesture, but it really helps the channel. If you're streaming on Spotify or Apple, a 5-star review would be greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to connect with me, read up on my blogs, past episodes, go to joepardavila.com. Until next time, adios.